Hi, I'm George Pearson. In this Photoshop Elements video, we'll be talking about this warning dialog box. You may have seen this. No pixels are more than 50% selected. Let's just close that, and there it is again. I'll show you what that's all about. Now, if you enjoy this video, make sure you click that like button and, of course, share with your friends. Subscribe to my channel so you don't miss out on any videos in the future. And to learn everything about Photoshop Elements, take a look at my complete training, and you'll find a link for that up there in the upper right-hand corner. Okay, let's get to it. So here's this warning dialog box, this 50% selected or not selected warning dialog box right there. Let's explain what this is talking about. When it's talking about 50%, it's talking about transparency. Now I have a box here, I have that set up, and that gives me this warning. I'll go ahead and I'll recreate that in just a minute. But first, let's talk about other ways, probably the most common way of getting this warning dialog box. I'm going to delete these two layers here. Just get rid of those. There we go. And have my nice background layer here. Let's say I wanted to make a selection right in here. I'll just make a selection using a nice rectangular marquee, just like that. So for them to take a look at. There it is. Now notice it makes a nice selection. No problem at all. That's because everything underneath of this is 100% value. And that's because it's on our background picture. If I increase the feathering, I'll just put this up to 50 pixels feathering. It's going to soften the edge in here. Let's deselect that and I'll make a new one. So it softens the edge, and there's now transparency happening along this edge. If I copy this to a new layer, go up here to Layer, New, via Copy, and I'll hide that. You can see how there's a softness now on that edge. Make it a bit easier to see. I'm going to put a solid background in behind this. I'll just fill this with that green I have. There we are. I can really see it now. So in here, this part is at 100% transparency, and it goes down to 0% transparency out there. So in this edge, there are areas that are less than 50% transparency, but most of the image here is at 100% transparency. So we still get that selection. Just hide that, and I'll get rid of that layer. Let's bring our background back in again. Let's now change this feathering here up a lot. I'll put it way up to 200%. This is going to be larger than the rectangle that I'm drawing. And if I let go now, I get that warning dialog box. That's because that transparent part of the feathering now comes clear into the middle part or further than into my rectangle, so that there is no spot of the rectangle that is at least 50% visible. And that's what it's talking about in here. So the first thing, if you get this warning dialog box, is take a look at your feathering. Let me just do that again. So my feathering is real high here. It's larger than what I'm drawing right there, and I get that warning dialog box. So first thing to check your feathering. I normally like keeping mine down at about 0 or possibly 1. It just softens the edge up just a little bit. Most of my selections, I will soften up the edge after I make the selections. I do it as 2 steps, which gives me more control over that. Okay, that takes care of the feathering option. Another way of getting that dialog box is if you have a transparent layer like this. There's my background, and I'm on a transparent layer, and I'll make my selection. I let go, and I have a nice selection. Let's again change our feathering. Just close that down. Change the feathering up to 200 again, so it's too large. Make a selection. And notice again, I'm getting that. So even though my layer is transparent, there's nothing on the layer. It's basing this upon the feathering and not on the contents of the layer. So that's one way that this happens. Okay, let's do another way in here, and that's if you have a shape. I'm going to change my color here to something a little bit different. Let's go into our blues just for some variety. There we go, a nice little blue. And I'll grab my shape tool, and then I'll draw a shape in here and grab the magic wand. Now, right now it's set at 49%. I'll just put this at 100%. It doesn't matter. The opacity on this shape doesn't matter. I need to simplify the shape before I can select this with the magic wand. So I can either right click over here on the name and choose simplify, or just click on the shape and get a warning dialog box about that and choose OK. So it will select that shape just by clicking on it. If I'm down here on New Selection, let's just deselect that. If I'm on Subtract from Selection, and I'll click on this, it'll give me a selection. That's fine. But if I already have a selection and I click inside of that selection using the Subtract selection, I again get a warning dialog box about no pixels selected. That's because they've already been selected and they're currently actively selected, and I haven't added anything new into it. So again, another warning dialog box you'll get. On this one, just make sure that you're not on that Subtract and you're not clicking inside of an existing selection. There's one click a second time, and there's that warning dialog box. Okay, there's a couple things that can happen to you if you're working with these different selections and reasons why you may get that warning about no pixels selected or less than 50% selected. One has to do with the feathering. Let me just show that one again down here. I'll grab my selection. There it is. Again, that's if your feathering is too high compared to the size of your selection. As one more time, you may see that dialog box. Let's switch back up here to our shape. I'll bring that back up again, back to the magic wand. Now I just did a selection and cancel that selection, but notice that I'm sitting on that Subtract selection down here, and I'll click in there, and again there's that dialog box, and that's because that's that same Subtract from selection right down there. Even though nothing is selected at this point, and it should select that, because I just did a selection and then close the selection down, it's going to give me that same warning dialog box. But again, this one goes back to that previous selection, and the previous selection set at the 200% or 200 pixels for the edge. So the main thing about making your selections and not getting that warning dialog box in there is just to check your settings. If you're using the magic wand, make sure you're over here on New Selection when you're making a new selection, and you're just fine. Or if you are working on an image like this and a selection, make sure your feathering is not too high. Let's just set this down to 1 pixel. There we go, and there's my selection, and there it is. You can go, pretty good selection, pretty good feathering in here. I'll put it right up to 50, which is a real large feathering. Works out just fine because it's big enough shape to handle that feathering. So check your feathering on that one. So there it is, a bit about why you get that particular warning dialog box and ways to get around it. Thank you for watching my video. I hope you found it useful. If you like this video, click on the like button below to let others know. You can click the subscribe button so you don't miss any of my videos in the future. I'm frequently uploading new training videos. Don't forget to check out my website at howtogurus.com.